It started with a scream, sharp enough to freeze every card game in the saloon. The piano went silent, glasses stopped mid-air, and the Cowboys who'd been laughing seconds ago turned toward the door like ghosts had just walked in and, in a way. One had her name was Clara. No one knew much about her, except that she had a stare colder than the river in December and a voice that could stop a man's heart mid-beat. The saloon owner, old Mr. Dugan, had hired her for one reason, to scare away the Cowboys who caused trouble every night, wrecked his tables and drank their worth in whiskey without ever paying. Dugan thought a woman like Clara, tall, quiet, with eyes like thunder, would make men think twice before walking in. He was wrong. The first night she worked, 3 Cowboys came. Swaggering in from the dust storm outside, they laughed loud enough to shake the lamps, and one of them, a blonde kid barely old enough to shave, tipped his hat and said, "You here to serve drinks or scare off ghosts?" Miss Clara didn't answer. She just looked at him, long enough for the boy's grin to die halfway across his lips. He muttered something under his breath and turned away. The saloon fell quiet again, but that quiet didn't last long, because by the next week, twice as many Cowboys showed up. Something about her, the mystery, the danger, maybe even the sadness in her eyes, made them come back, and that's where the story really begins. By the time the sun rose the next morning, word had spread through the dusty town of Redemption Ridge that Dugan's saloon had a new woman working there. They said she wasn't afraid of anything. They said she carried a secret past and a revolver that never missed. What they didn't know was that Clara hadn't fired a gun in years. She couldn't, not since the night she lost everything. Dugan had found her weeks earlier wandering outside of town, covered in dust, her dress torn. He didn't ask questions, just gave her food, a bed in the back room, and said she could work the night shift if she wanted. She didn't speak much, but her silence alone was enough to keep the rowdy ones at bay. One night, though, everything changed. A man walked in wearing a black coat and a grin that could slice through steel. His name was Eli Kane, a bounty hunter with more blood on his hands than he could ever wash off. The room shifted the moment he entered. Even the drunk sobered up. He looked straight at Clara and said, "Didn't think I'd ever find you again." Every muscle in her body tense. Dugan looked between them, confused. "You know this fella?" Clara, she swallowed hard. Used to. Eli took a step closer, boots echoing on the floorboards. "You ran out on me," he said quietly, left in the middle of the night with nothing but a whisper. "You still think you can hide behind a bar counter?" The silence in that room could have broken glass then. Just as Dugan started to speak, a sudden shout came from the back. One of the Cowboys accusing another of cheating at cards. Chairs flew, bottles shattered, and in the chaos, Eli moved fast, grabbing Clara by the arm, pulling her toward the door. But she wasn't that scared girl anymore. Clara slammed her elbow into his ribs and spun free. "You don't own me anymore, Eli," she hissed. "You never did." The whole room froze again. Even the fight stopped. Eli looked at her, breathing hard, but for the first time his eyes softened. "You think I came to hurt you?" he said. "No, Clara, I came to bring you home." She stared at him. Home, burned down a long time ago, and she walked away, leaving him standing there, the door swinging behind her as the wind carried dust through the saloon once more. Days passed, and the men kept coming, not because they wanted whiskey or trouble, but because of her. Clara had become something rare in that town, a story worth remembering. She spoke little, but every word she said carried weight. She helped Dugan keep the peace, broke up fights, and even stitched up wounded drifters who wandered in from the trail. One Cowboy, the blonde kid from the first night, asked her once, "Why do you stay here? You could leave, start over somewhere far away." She looked at him for a long time and finally said, "Because if I keep running, my past keeps following. But if I stand still, maybe I can make peace with it." That night, Dugan found her sitting by the window, watching the moon rise. "You've changed this place," he said softly. "Used to be nothing but noise and smoke now. Men come here just to feel something good for a while. You gave him that." Clara smiled faintly. "Maybe they're not the only ones who needed it, but the peace didn't last." Eli came back one last time, not as the man who'd hunted her, but as a man hunted himself. He was bleeding, barely able to stand, chased by men who wanted his head for a bounty twice his worth. Dugan dragged him in, and Clara's hands shook as she tried to save him. "I should have left you in the dust," she whispered through tears. He smiled weakly. "You never could." When morning came, Eli was gone. Not dead, but vanished. He left behind only his gun and a note for when you stop running and start living. Clara never saw him again. But from that day on, she wasn't the ghost that haunted Dugan's saloon. She was its heart. Cowboys still came, still drank, still sang. But now, they came to listen when she spoke, to hear her stories, to see the woman who turned her pain into peace. And as the years passed, the legend of the saloon ghost spread far beyond Redemption Ridge. They said she could silence a fight with a single look. They said no. Man dared cross her. But the ones who'd been there, the ones who'd seen her smile under the lantern light, knew the truth. She wasn't hired to scare men away. She was the reason they kept coming back.